The cafeteria had been loud just moments before, cutlery clinking against porcelain, low conversations weaving together, the hiss of a coffee machine breathing steam into the air. It was the kind of noise people stopped noticing because it felt permanent, like it would always be there. But when the milk carton tipped, when gravity pulled it into a slow, merciless arc, the sound collapsed into a brittle hush. The white liquid struck first at the man's shoulder, splashing outward, cool droplets catching the overhead lights before sliding down his coat. The fabric darkened instantly, sagging with the weight of it. Milk dripped from the cuff of his sleeve, pattering onto the polished floor where it spread into a thin, uneven puddle. For a fraction of a second, no one laughed. Then the room erupted. A sharp bark of amusement cut through the silence, followed by another, and another, until laughter bounced off the glass walls and stainless steel counters. Chairs scraped as people turned to get a better look. A few phones were already raised, lenses pointed with casual cruelty. "Oh man, did you see that?" someone said, grinning wide. "Guess breakfast came early," another voice added. The man stood still, his posture unbroken, as if the milk had missed him entirely. He was neither tall nor imposing, just an unremarkable figure in a plain coat that had clearly lived a long life. The seams were worn, the color dulled from years of use. His shoes were clean but old, leather softened by time rather than polished by money. A thin stream of milk slid from his collarbone down to his chest, soaking into the fabric. He looked down briefly, not in shock, but in quiet acknowledgement, as though he were noting the weather. The young man holding the empty carton laughed the loudest. He wore a tailored suit, the kind that announced its price without saying a word. His tie sat perfectly centered, his cufflinks gleaming. He tilted the carton upside down, giving it a theatrical shake to prove it was empty. "Oops," he said, not even pretending to apologize. "Butterfingers." His friend snickered, emboldened. Someone clapped slowly, mock applause echoing in the open space. "Careful," another voice chimed in, syrupy with sarcasm. "This place isn't a soup kitchen." The man finally raised his head. His face was calm, too calm for the situation. There was no tightening around the mouth, no flare of the nostrils, none of the signals people expected when they crossed a line. His eyes moved slowly, taking in the faces around him, the smirks, the lazy confidence of people who had never been challenged in rooms like this. "I'm sorry," the young man said, still smiling. "Were you in the way?" A few people laughed again, louder now that the tension had broken. The moment had been labeled harmless fun, and that label gave everyone permission to enjoy it. "You should clean that up," someone suggested, pointing at the spreading puddle. "Before someone slips." Another leaned back in his chair and folded his arms. "Actually," he said, looking the man up and down, "maybe you should clean yourself up. This is a professional environment." The word professional hung in the air, heavy with implication. The man said nothing. That silence irritated them more than anger would have. If he had shouted, if he had protested, they could have dismissed him as unstable, dramatic. His quiet presence felt like resistance, and resistance demanded escalation. The young executive stepped closer, invading the man's space. He smelled faintly of expensive cologne and fresh coffee. "You lost?" he asked. "Because people like you don't usually wander in here." The man's gaze settled on him, steady and unwavering. "I know where I am," he replied softly. His voice was even, measured, carrying no hint of embarrassment. It wasn't the voice of someone pleading to belong. It was the voice of someone who already did. That unsettled them. "Well," the executive said, forcing a laugh, "good for you. But maybe you should head out before security does it for you." He reached out and tapped 2 fingers against the man's chest, not hard, just enough to assert dominance, to remind him of the invisible hierarchy they all believed in. Milk smeared under the touch. Several people inhaled sharply, anticipating an outburst. None came. The man looked down at the milk-stained spot, then back up. For a brief moment, something unreadable passed behind his eyes, not anger, not sadness, but understanding. As if he had just received confirmation of something he already suspected. "I will," he said quietly. The simplicity of the response drew another wave of laughter. "That's right," someone said. "Know your place." A woman near the window hesitated, her smile faltering for a second, but when she saw everyone else enjoying the spectacle, she laughed too. It was easier that way. Safer. Phones stayed raised. Comments flew, half jokes, half insults, stacking on top of each other until the man became less human and more entertainment. He knelt down then, slowly, deliberately, ignoring the murmurs that rippled through the crowd. Milk soaked into the knee of his trousers as he reached for the empty carton lying near his foot. He picked it up and set it upright, as if restoring order to something that had been carelessly discarded. When he stood, he brushed his hands together, small flakes of dried paper dusting away. "I'll take care of it," he said, gesturing to the spill. No one offered help. No one stepped aside. They watched him like spectators at a performance that was nearly over. He walked toward the exit, his shoes leaving faint wet marks on the floor. Each step was unhurried, dignified. The laughter followed him, growing softer as distance stretched between them. At the door, he paused. For just a heartbeat, he turned his head and looked back. His eyes met several others, some still amused, some suddenly uncomfortable, some refusing to meet his gaze at all. The city skyline loomed behind him through the glass, steel and sunlight cutting sharp lines across the room. In that moment, his phone vibrated once in his pocket. He didn't check it. He didn't need to. Then he pushed the door open and disappeared into the corridor, leaving behind the faint smell of milk, a wet patch on the floor, and a group of people utterly convinced they had just humiliated someone who would never matter. The cafeteria slowly returned to its rhythm. Conversations resumed. Jokes were retold with exaggerated flair. Someone ordered another coffee.